Welcome back, 1867 Sports Show. Back with you for another week. Episode number, Zach Caleros. This is a new theme. I'm going to do this.
I was going to say this is a running theme you've
Running
introduced as
theme
of
every week
last
now.
week.
We're going to drop a couple of tidbits in the episode number as to what we're going to be talking about every week. But very, very exciting episode tonight because we've got the CFL Draft, which is happening right now as we speak. Planned it the whole time. There's no coincidences whatsoever. But we've also got the 2024 CFL season on the precipice of happening. So leading into training camp, we wanted to bring in a very special guest, and who better than 10-year CFL veteran, 3-time Grey Cup winner, and all-around good guy, Mr. Andrew Jones. Welcome to the 1867 Sports Show.
Thank you.
Again, man, we've been talking a little bit leading up to this episode, and we could not be more excited. For those of you who don't know, I mentioned Andrew on the show a couple of times, going way back to the ripe old year of 2007, where you and I crossed paths officially. We played against each other for a number of years, but officially were drafted the same year, 2007, to the BC Lions, and incidentally, we're roommates when we went out there. So maybe we'll start off with that, man. Kind of give everybody a little bit of an introduction on yourself. Obviously played at McMaster, storied career there, going to BC, and give us a background on Andrew Jones, the 10-year CFL vet, 3-time Grey Cup winner.
Man, I don't even know if I can remember back that far. 2007 so long ago.
So many concussions.
Too many of those too. Exactly. I got drafted by BC same year as you. When I played D-line through university, though, so we butted heads a little bit, and then they called me the night before the draft, and I heard from my agent, too, that they were looking at me more as an offensive lineman, and I was just like, I just want to play football, so it doesn't really matter what it is, like, let me get in here. So they flew me out after the draft to go down to Laval to work with Dan Durazio. You remember that?
I do remember.
And
so I'll just kind of, I'll lead into this by saying Dan Durazio, everyone will probably hear this name multiple times because world-renowned offensive line coach, could not be any smaller of an individual.
Yeah.
So, like, he's what, 5'4", about 100 pounds soaking wet, and just the meanest person, but the biggest sweetheart off the field too.
And his favorite, like, he had those mottos up in his office, and one of the ones that I remember, the first one is, the only way to kill time is to work it to death. So if just that gives you a little bit of the mindset of this man. So this is my first foray into playing offensive line, other than, like, in high school you kind of get it a little bit. And so we go out with this guy, and he's there for the East-West, and they got us out there just putting us through hell, basically. Just like, and he's a technician, though, so it's like your pinky toe on the man's right big toe, like he's just like breaking it down to a science. So it was great. I don't think there's anyone else I could have learned from, to be honest. Like the way that he taught O-line and broke it down, and but man, he liked to make you work.
No, you can imagine, Andrew and I, both fairly large gentlemen, going through the paces of, and like a 3-hour workout, and we were doing 2-a-days.
Yeah.
So we were getting drafted. We're like, we're gonna just go down there, we're gonna schmooze with people, we're gonna be the envy of all these players participating in the East-West Bowl. And they're watching us, and they're like, man, I'm glad we're not those guys.
Yeah. And Dan, he loved to put on a show too. So if we had other people watching, it was way worse. If it was on our own, it was bad enough. But if we got any kind of audience, like, he just increased the tempo like tenfold, and it was just like, let's go.
Yeah.
It got worse.
Yeah. And you made a good point earlier, because you mentioned that you actually hadn't played offensive line up until that point when BC brought you in. Obviously, you were a fantastic defensive lineman at McMaster. We mentioned it, a couple episodes ago when one of your old friends, Chris Van Zyl, called it a career, and we celebrated his obviously fantastic run in the CFL, but he was also a defensive lineman. So not only were one of you, a 10+ year lineman in the CFL, but two of you from the same defensive line ended up transitioning to become just fantastic offensive linemen. So, obviously, you guys at McMaster were a different breed back then, because you could obviously jump back and forth between the two. But take us through a little bit of that college period, because you had some pretty legendary coaches when you were there and some pretty
Yeah.
legendary teammates when you were there as well.
Man, honestly, like that recruiting class, like just to start with the players, the guys that I came in with, like we had like studs all over the place. Like we had Pottinger, myself, Van Ziel. Not that I thought I was a stud, but I was pretty good. But like Van Ziel, we had Jesse Card, like all Canadians, like all over the place, man. Like it was pretty wild. Like that Marshall, who was the coach at that time, and kind of like recruited all of us, and we all ended up coming there that same year. And it was like, so we had, and already on that team before we got there, we had like Kojo, we had Jesse Lumsden, we had John Behe was in our class too. We had a ton of guys, man. Like it was pretty wild. And then like even to get on, like I remember like my first year, like just getting on the field, we had like Colin Shanahan, who was like already like kind of established 5th-year guy. Like he was the man, you know what I mean? So I got to learn from him, got to learn a lot from that side. Then we had Jeff Robertshaw. We
Yep.
had, man, like it was wild. Like how many guys that we like that came in that year. I don't know. And then we had like, and a lot of those guys kind of went on to play in the CFL too. So we had like a lot of like we had Tristan Clovis, like guys that keep coming back, man.
You pretty much had a CFL team on the field at
Yeah.
McMaster for about 3 years there. It was,
Yeah.
again, we matched up against you guys every year, and every year was just an absolute, railroad of a game, because you guys just demolished us for the first 3 years that I was at Ottawa U.
It was
And
pretty special.
yeah, and I mean, like I said, like we were pretty good. We ended up finishing third in the conference 2 years in a row, and these guys are just beating us by 50 points every year. So, the fact that, again, you guys had such a special group, it was just kind of, fun to watch when you're not on the field, because, like I said, you guys were actually really fun to break down. It's like, man, these guys are fucking good, right? So, but anyways, we can talk about that a little bit more, but you mentioned a couple of guys in there, like obviously Chris Van Zyl, Jeff Robertshaw, but then you get to a guy like Jesse Lumsden, who's kind of got that special aura around him, right? He was kind of the guy. He was like the main offensive player in university at that time. Then goes on to have an NFL career plus an Olympic career after that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, knowing Jesse a little bit, but understanding kind of where he comes from with the lineage with Neil Lumsden, obviously his dad being a very famous collegiate and professional player as well. Maybe break it down to, before you even get to the pros, you're playing with a guy who you kind of say that guy is going to be, going to be a pro, no questions asked.
Yeah.
How does that really make you kind of step it up in practice and say, okay, I got to make my mark by putting up, some numbers against this guy?
You have to, man. Like it's honestly like, because there were so many guys, and I didn't even talk about like our offensive linemen that we had. You know what I mean? Like we had studs across the board on that side too. So
Yeah,
it was just like every week you're getting better. You're getting, because like you have to step up, and we competed a lot. And so like then you see a guy like Jesse, and like that guy was just like every time he touched the ball, man, like it was going. Like he was just like that kind of special player. But before that, man, like I think it was like the first time we did Okies in training camp. And I was like a pretty big D lineman. And I remember going against, and it wasn't Jesse, it was Kojo. And I had to go against Kojo, and he like put my helmet backward. Like he hit me so hard, bro. Like it was like, that was where like you get those welcome to the next level moment. And that was the one where I was like, man, I gotta bring it. Like everyone kind of gets better. And like, but these guys have been working out, like everything like that. So it was just like, but then like Jesse was more like, he was so fast. Like he was fast, he was strong. He had all of it. So it was like those, when you see those guys in practice working, you got to work. You got to make sure that you're like on your A game, and you got to make sure that it just kind of like makes everyone keeps pushing each other to get better. So it was just like, that was a kind of a pretty special locker room to have guys like that all over the place. Man, it was crazy.
yeah,
And especially when, you're talking about that kind of welcome to that next level moment there, right? And obviously you come in as a highly touted recruit, and you're going to evolve as you go throughout the years here. But what were some things that you kind of picked up along the way, whether it was from a savvy vet or, a coaching staff or whatever, that helped prepare you to get ready to go to that CFL level in your later years at university?
It's toward my later years in university. So we had a guy named Peter Moore who was there before I was, and I don't know exactly his backstory, but he had transferred, I think, from some school in the States. And anyways, he just randomly showed up at my house one night. It was kind of weird. I was like, all right, and then we just started talking football. I don't know, like, and then he was telling me, he's like, listen, he's like, and this was like something that stuck with me further, like throughout my career. He was like, when you line up against the guy, he's like, you're getting to the place now where it's like you're trying to make it to the pros, like that's what you want to do. He's like, when you line up against someone, it's like they're gonna take your food off your table, you're taking that, you know what I mean? Like basically, like put it down to like every time you line up with somebody, like it's me or you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's the kind of mentality that I started to take into all practices and all the games, and like kept going with that through into the pros, where it wasn't money on the line yet. There was no game checks, but like at that point, it was just like you had to start to think that way. And once I started to think that way, it really did elevate how I started to play and how I started to go after things. Because it was like, I want to make it. Like I knew that's what I wanted to do, and if I wanted to make it, then I was gonna have to go hard for it.
So I have to thank Peter Moore for giving you the motivation to kick our ass every
Yeah.
year. Thank you,
Yeah.
Peter Moore.
He actually told me to be an angry black man. I was gonna leave that up, but whatever.
No,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, motivational words are
Yeah.
motivational words, however you want to take it. But seeing as how we're kind of doing the show while the draft is happening tonight, maybe take us through your draft experience, either from the combine workouts to the actual day of the draft itself. Like what was that process for you? Because I know what it was like for me. It was stressful. I
Yeah.
pretty much had knots in my stomach for about 2 months straight, and it was it's not as fun as people make it out to be.
No, it was work, man. Like honestly, like I remember like the combine itself, just like I had actually tweaked my hamstring running before, so I was like, I didn't even run my 40 at the combine, because like I'm going to be able to do one-on-ones, I'm going to be able to do everything else, but I'm like, I'm not going to just go and blow my 40, like blow my hamstring running a 40. So was tweet coming in, but I was like, it's fine. Like just wrapped it up. You know what I mean? You're gonna get through it. And so there was like, and as a D lineman, like we had like there's a lot of good D linemen there. And there's obviously like it's the best, you know what I mean? So you get to go against the best guys from all over the country, and you gotta prove yourself. And I had a pretty good one-on-one sessions with everybody. And so, but like just even everything else before that, like the kind of the interview process, like just showing up, like is your first kind of really pro experience, where you're just like, you're coming in, they're gonna poke and prod you and weigh you and make you take your shirt off so they can look at you and see all this stuff, right? It's just wild. Like it's not like a normal thing for a person to go through.
Do you remember any kind of left field questions that anyone threw your way during that process?
I'm not going to say any names, but I'm going to tell you a funny story. We were at a dinner, and the coaches kind of can go around to the tables and talk to players and everything like that. And one of the coaches came over and asked everybody, he's like, so like, what's your favorite book? And guys kind of, said their whatever books, or I don't remember what I said, but one guy at the table was like, I don't really read. He goes, I like movies. So it was like, and he had a great career too. So, but it's just like at least he was upfront and honest. You know what I mean? Coaches, like they want to see what you're gonna say. Like I'm sure some guys are like, oh, I read the 48 law or whatever, the 12 laws of power, 48 laws,
cover to cover.
Yeah. War and Peace, like anything like that. But yeah, it's just like you got to be yourself. You got to answer, and like you got to just like hope that whatever you say lands.
Yeah, and it's such a weird process with that too. And I'll let you get back to kind of elaborating on the lead up again. But to that point, I remember when I had gone out for dinner with one of the teams. Again, I'm not going to mention who the team is or who the people involved were. And basically, took me out, went to a restaurant. They just kind of ask a few questions here and there, and we make our order. And instead of fries, I get salad, thinking, well, I don't want to be that guy who's ordering all kind of greasy, fatty stuff. So I'm just going to get a salad with my steak that I had ordered. And one of the scouts looked at me dead in the face when I made the order. And he's like, I don't want guys who eat salad.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, I'm like, that's the weirdest thing to say. But like, in that mindset, it's kind of like the old 60s and 70s. Like you got to rip the meat right off the bone, and you don't even cook it. You just take it right off the cow and shove it into your body.
Yeah,
it's just like like Andrew was saying, it's such a weird process, because not only is it the physical aspects of it that are strange, it's the mental aspects that are strange. and all the interactions you have are strange because everybody's
yeah.
kind of on edge, whether you're
Yeah.
part of the, you know, the coaching staff, part of the scouting staff, and the players. Don't even get me started on them because they're completely whacked out.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that Kyle realized that the Simpsons were right, that you don't make friends with salad.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
And it's funny you say that because that's literally the thing that went through my head as he's saying it. I'm like, I'm not making friends with salad right now. I should have got some brisket on the side instead of that.
Can I have
But,
a steak with a side of steak as well too, please?
I would have been in the same boat too, because like I was trying to be like, because I wanted to play D line still. I was like, man, I got to be light. So I like came in. I think I weighed like 299. Like I got under 300, something like that. So I'd been eating like just super clean leading up, and you know what I mean, cutting out carbs and all this stuff. You know what I mean. I remember like, so I probably was at the same boat, just eating like protein and like greens, just trying to be like, what's this guy doing? You got to eat.
Yeah, if it makes you guys feel any better, the team ended up finishing last in the CFL that year. So,
oh, there you go. Yeah, maybe they needed more salad.
If anyone wants to do any research, go check out the 2007 season. So you finished last in the CFL.
Right now, these stories are just like the South Korean news agency when they don't have the found footage, just like the cartoons and
we could figure it out.
like other recreations there. Yeah, that's what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, obviously we're talking about the lead up to the draft, you know, the draft night or draft day back in, you know, in our day, because we didn't have it on TSN. We had a webcast that we had to log into.
Did we even have a webcast? I remember hitting refresh a bunch of times.
Yeah, that was the first year that they had a live stream webcast. And I think it was Mike Hogan and Dwayne Ford who were doing the pick by pick analysis.
Yeah. But you had to have your AOL free, dial up CD that you put into the drive.
You know what the funny part is that you actually had to have a specific cable that you could plug into your computer to use it, because you actually couldn't use a USB or an HDMI. It had to be one of those weird, like, what is it, like the two-pronged ones where you have to like twist the little knobs on the side to screw it in. One of those ones. So that's how kind of old the technology was back in our day. But going through that day, again, you wake up, the draft starts at noon. Yeah. And then it goes all day. Yeah. Right? So what was that like for you? Like, when did you get your first call from a team that was looking at picking you? When did you think you were going? Kind of, what was happening? Where were you? All that kind of good stuff.
I didn't know too much. I know there was like a couple teams that had shown interest. I didn't know like how early I'd go. And I'd also in my 5th year missed some games because of an injury. And then being a defensive lineman, and like I heard that there's like my agent at the time was like, yeah, there's a few teams are looking as an offensive lineman, so like we'll just kind of play it by ear. But the first call I got was from BC, like that they just called me and they said like, if you don't, I forget who it was, they said like, if you don't go, it's probably, I think it was Neil McAvoy, like if they don't take you now, we're gonna take you next. And then, but like, we're looking at you to play O-line. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I just want to play. Like, if you guys draft me, I'll be happy to go, and like whatever, we'll do what I got to do. So that was like the first conversation I had. And then like once they saw my name come up on the screen, I was like, yeah, here we go. Like, it's time to put the work in. So there was no big story or big party or anything like that, but it was just like, let's go. We're on to the next.
Yeah, I will say I was having a few pops during that day. And I remember getting a call in round 1 from a team saying, hey, are you healthy? And of course I wasn't, but I was going to lie. It said, oh yeah, perfectly healthy. Everything's fine. I literally ripped my shoulder off the bone at the start of that season, played through it. And then I tweaked my knee, much like you did with your hamstring, training for the combines and everything leading up. So I'm like, my body's a mess right now. I'm literally having, a couple of beers and some vodka to, numb the pain in my body. And so, but I remember thinking like, oh, okay, like they're calling me in the first round. Like they must be, thinking about taking me early. And then the second round came. I got another phone call. And then a third round came, no phone call. And it's like, what's going on? Right. And so we're all like, there's a few of us sitting in a basement and we're all drinking and we're all like, okay, this is good. It's getting depressing because none of us are going at the same time. So we're seeing like, all your teammates go pretty early. We're seeing, a bunch of the other guys that we played against go pretty early. And then it finally got to the point, it's much like you. I got that phone call right at the end. I think when they were actually picking you in the 4th round. And they said, hey, by the way, we just picked Andrew Jones. We're converting him to offensive line. We're also looking at taking you to come in and play offensive line for us as well. Andrew's going to play guard, and you're going to be our swing guy to play center, tackle, whatever.
Right.
And they're like, if you're around. I said, well, based on how the day's going, I think I'm going to be around. So I'll probably be talking to you by the end of the round pretty quickly here. Yeah. And lo and behold, like, again, everything kind of happened. Yeah. Like as soon as you get that call, it's like, all right, time to get to work and go from there. So yeah, like going forward now, on your way out to, lovely British Columbia, which, obviously I think anyone who hasn't been out on that coast, you need to go. Just for the experience of the sight lines, the air is just fresher out there. There's something about being on the West Coast that's just kind of invigorating. And we get to training camp. And do you remember where we had training camp in 2007?
Columbia Bible College in Abbotsford. I will never forget that place.
Yeah. And it's exactly what people think it is. It's literally a religious, vocational school where people go for a certain time frame of the year. And it just so happened that during, training camp, that's not when their classes are in session. So we all kind of collaborate there. All the rookies and undrafted free agents and whatnot, we're there reporting early, going through we just went through all this testing, during the combines and everything. And then we have to do it again once we report.
Yeah.
And the first thing, everybody line up, go pee in a cup, come back. And that's kind of how you get to know people, when you're literally waiting in line to go, to go pee in a cup, and then, make sure that everything's coming back clean. But, it was kind of funny because you and I had obviously met, you mentioned in, at Laval, and we had known each other a little bit from playing, but then we end up becoming, roommates, during the whole process, which was actually, I think, a little bit, I know for me, it was, it kind of eased my nerves a little bit, because I had someone there who was going through it for the first time, just like I was. Yeah. But could you describe, to everybody listening to this, what the room was like, and how the, how everything worked with the bathroom situation with our neighbors?
It was, so we shared the bathroom, right? So there's like a bathroom in between each dorm. The worst part about it, though, I would say, was you're in these, like, it's like almost dug out of the wall. Like the bed is like not even like it's probably 6 feet. And then it's got this little, if 6 feet, and then it's got this little pad here. So it's like pushed into the wall, and then you got the wood, and then you got this little pad there that you can barely, as a taller guy, like you can't stretch your feet all the way out. If you do, your foot is on the concrete. And then you've got this tiny pad, and then you're going through like the toughest time of your life, with this like terrible pillow, this small room, and then hot as hell in there, and just like, and then sharing the bathroom with 2 other guys on the other side. Yeah. And then your roommate across from you, and hopefully pray to God that he doesn't snore, because I've had a few of those in training camp, and that makes it a rough time. But like these were almost, I mean, it was very sparse. Let's just say it that way.
And I want to say the square footage of that room was probably about 10. Yeah. Because you literally had the 2 beds, a little runway in between to go to the door, and that's it. Yeah.
But and 2 large men on either side.
2 large men
trying to live.
The square footage to weight ratio was way out of whack in that
room. But yeah, like obviously, like we went to a team that had just come off of winning a Grey Cup, so you had pretty much the most loaded roster that you're ever going to see, for a CFL program. I mean, just our quarterback room, you had Dave Dickinson, Buck Pierce, and Jarius Jackson. Yeah. Right. Then you go to the offensive line. You're looking at Rob Murphy, Jason Jimenez as our 2 tackles, Kelly Bates, Shirko Haja-Razuli, who played the University of Miami as our guards, Angus Reid, who's a legendary center. Then you've got a couple of first-round picks from the years prior with Lauren Plant and Dean Valley, and then you've got us, a couple of slapdicks that are just kind of learning things as we go along. And then, like, again, our receiver, G. Simon, Paris Jackson, Jason Claremont. I mean, absolutely loaded on the offensive side. Yeah. Then you go over to the defensive side.
Yeah,
And I
Cam
mean,
Wake, freaking like who else was over there?
Brent
Yeah,
Johnson, Tyrone Williams,
Aaron
Aaron
Hunt,
Hunt. Yeah. And then,
Abby
the
Glatt.
linebacker, Avi Glatt. Yeah.
That's
Sebastian Clovis.
secondary. Yeah,
Yeah. And then, the secondary with Ryan Phillips, now coach, Dwayne
yeah,
Washington or Mark
yeah,
Washington, now a
yeah,
coach, Aaron Miles, now a
yeah,
coach, and Dante Marsh.
yeah.
So, anyone who doesn't know who these guys are, just please go and Google who they are, because you're
It was
talking
actually
about
ridiculous.
multiple time CFL All Stars, all pros, and I think a couple of guys ended up on the All Decade team, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. So,
yeah.
anyways, this is a
And Corey
situation.
Banks. Don't forget
And
about Corey
Banks,
Banks.
we're forgetting about Corey Banks. That's right, probably the best one of them all.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, we're walking into a pretty, scary situation. We've already described Dan Durazio being,
Yeah.
a very intense individual. We described the roster. We described kind of the circumstances. But now we're going to play for an absolute legendary CFL coach in Wally Buono, who, again, anyone who hasn't played for a coach who has a resume like his, it's pretty intimidating as well. So you've got all these things kind of, going through your head and whatnot. And, first couple of days of training camp, if you remember, what was that like for you?
I'll tell you, like, it's hard to remember. Like, I've been thinking about this. Like, it's hard to remember a lot in training camp because I think it's like one of those things that, like, once you're through it, like, it's almost like an exam at school. You just kind of flush all the information right after. So you learn as much as you can, you get through it. But like, I remember, like, I mean, the one thing, man, is like, and it's a difference between now is like, we were legit 2-a-days. Like, you would get up in the morning, have your breakfast. You'd go out on the field. We'd practice for like 2 hours. You'd have lunch, another meeting, and then you go put on your wet equipment back on, go out and start doing one-on-ones like immediately. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was such a crazy, like, and then you don't have time to recover. You don't have, like, you're just like, and then in between that, then you got like meetings, and Durazio was like a guy who liked to meet. He was a lot of like, wherever you could hear the other guys leaving their meetings after like maybe like 45 minutes or whatever, going back to the dorms or whatever. And the O-line, we are there all night. Like, it was like till 10, and then you got to go and you got to sleep and you got to get up and you got to do it again. Like, it is like Groundhog Day, and you're just like, and there's like, how many guys are in training camp? Like 100 guys. Like, it's like, and then it's just like reps after rep after rep. Like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. And, again, going through that, it really kind of makes you wonder whether you want to be a professional athlete.
Oh yeah,
because it's difficult. It really does put a lot of strain on you. Guys get injured the first day. Some guys get injured on the third day. It's one of those things where, you really have to have the mental toughness as well as the fortune of not becoming one of those statistics that come up, right? And that's the one thing that I always kind of tell people is that just going there and the experience alone, you'll always have stories.
Yeah.
But the guys like you who end up, pushing through that, getting past that first year, kind of breaking through that shell, and then having the 10-year career that you did, there's so few and far between that you have to appreciate, one, your resiliency for doing that, but also, the way that you progressed throughout your career was so impressive to me. And like, obviously I followed, every single year that you were in the league.
Appreciate
Because it was just something that if I couldn't do it, I wanted, people that I knew to do it. Right.
Appreciate it.
So, going through, you went, BC, you moved on to Toronto, went to Edmonton, and then back with BC, for the full 10 years. But you won a Grey Cup at each stop.
Mm-hmm.
So go through that and tell us kind of how that ultimately feels when you're going through like a championship season and you ultimately get to that point of, hey, we're playing in the absolute biggest game in Canadian football. What's that like? Describe that emotion. And, does it ever get tiring going through it more than once?
Well, never. But before, like, but I mean, what you said, like, kind of talking about training camp, like, that's what preps you to do that. Like, the resiliency, like what it takes to get through like those dark days in training camp. You know what I mean? Like, you got to like dig deep, and you have to want it. And then, I mean, just like my career, like, so my first year was like, I got through training camp and I was put on practice roster. I spent the whole year on practice roster in BC. And then year 2, the second day of rookie camp, the very last play, I tore my ACL. So I was had progressed all that last year, learning how to play O-line, like getting better, and then like had a pretty good camp going so far. It was just 2 days, but like it was like things are going well. Like, I definitely had progressed. And then to have that, and then the team just like they don't have to, like, when you're not a vet, they don't have to keep you. So I ended up going back to Hamilton and working and just like trying to recover and rehab and come back. So then initially they brought me back after that, so that was 2008. So 2009 I missed, and I came back and had to go through it again, like go through training camp, and like met some of my really good friends, and got like ended up coming out as the starter coming out of training camp, and then tore my ACL again in like the third game of the year. You know what I mean? Like there's just like it's such a hard road, and you think it's going to go one way, you think you're going to be kind of just increasing all the time, but then it goes up and down, and you just got to like keep fighting and getting through. And like I remember the second time I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to play anymore. Like this is wild. Like I can go find something else to do, and like, you know what I mean? But deep down inside you also have that like, I want to play football. Like I want to this is what I want to do with my life, and like this is where I want to go. So it's just all the things that you learn kind of coming up to that point, you put it all together. And then the year we won Grey Cup in BC, 2011, we started off the season 0-5. Like we couldn't beat anybody. Like we were just like, and we were beating ourselves a lot, and it was like finger pointing in the locker room. But then like it kind of like got, actually not finger pointing in the locker room so much. It was more like from the outside, and we kind of got
Yeah.
together and like had to come together and be like, this is where we're gonna go. And then things started to happen, and then we won like 13 in a row. You know what I mean? So all those things kind of like, that was a special year because we battled, you know what I mean? And like you form like brotherhood with these guys, because like you're in the trenches, you go through training camp together, that shared misery, and like you're like, this is where we're gonna go. And like you got everybody kind of coming together and being tight, and it's just like it's a cool feeling. So that, like, obviously, it was being my first one, that was cool. Like to be in BC, at home in BC, playing in the Grey Cup, like I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. So it was just like that kind of was one of those moments where you come running out, and you're like, wow, like this is like, it's next level. It was loud as hell in that stadium too, because the dome, man,
Yeah.
it was, I still get thinking about it, still get chills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, right? Because every championship is kind of unique in the sense of how you ultimately get there. And, looking back on it now with the hindsight that you've got, like, does one of them maybe stand out more than the others in terms of not necessarily, what you overcame to get there, but just how the team was either constructed, or the culture, or they did things differently in their approach that was kind of unique in how they ultimately ended up winning it all?
Honestly, like the main thing that stayed was like all the guys are like, on any team that I've ever won on, like everybody's like truly like together, like everyone, like, you know what I mean? Like there's not really like that individual, and if there's like that individual in the locker room, they don't end up staying, they don't end up lasting. Like everybody kind of looks out for each other. Everyone, like, usually like on teams, like say the O-line will hang out with the O-line, the DBs hang out with the DBs, like every single team I've ever been on that has won, everybody hangs out with, you know what I mean? Everyone goes out together. We all would meet up for wings, like all sorts of things. So it's like, I think that's like the biggest thing, is like you're playing for the guy beside. It's not the same. Like it's not just guys coming and collecting checks. So I think that's like, I mean, the teams that, it's not always, I mean, we had some like really good, like you were saying with BC, like we had so many good players on that team. And then like in same thing with Edmonton, we had like Toronto. I mean, it's just, there's good rosters all over the place. But like Toronto is like a different season too, because we lost quite a few games, and like, we were all kind of up and down, and like we just got hot at the right time. But I think like the one thing is like, you always believe, like no matter what, like on the sideline, you're like, no matter whether you're up by whatever, or you're down, like you always believe you're going to win. Like if you're down, you believe, like there's no matter what, you can just get through. So I think that's kind of like the one thing that's on all the team that I've been on, that's been like the same, and any winning team, is that there's never like a doubt that like we can overcome this, like we can get this. Yeah.
What's the best stadium that you played in the CFL?
Man, the best stadium. Like I don't know. There's so many different, like, so many
They're,
different vibes.
they're all pretty good, yeah. But you're
Yeah.
right; like, they're all different vibes. But I'm curious because obviously you played in all of them. So what's
I mean,
what's one
like,
that maybe just kind of sticks out as like being memorable for you?
playing, this is funny too, because like, well, playing at the in Saskatchewan, man, like my last year, and like we finished that stadium when it was packed and it was loud. Like I don't know, there's not much too much like it. Like this just like it's pretty impressive when you get inside there and it's rocking. So I think that was kind of one of the coolest ones to play in. And then like some of the new ones now, like Winnipeg's really cool because it's the noise, man. But BC Place, like man, like that was when that place was loud, like the sound just came right back down on the field, and it was wild. So I don't know. It's hard to say what the best one was.
What's maybe one of the more underrated cities in terms of putting football aside, but just the city itself after the game, going out with the guys and having those kind of team bonding, building experiences there?
Uh,
Don't have to name names or anything, just
No,
looking for
no.
a city.
um, I would probably say like I think Winnipeg was kind of under the radar. Like I always had a fun time in Winnipeg, and a lot of people are just like Winnipeg, they don't think it would be any good. But I feel like Winnipeg was a very underrated and fun place.
Yeah, because I was gonna say like Montreal's the obvious answer.
Yeah, I mean, like but everyone knows, BC is
Yeah.
gonna be fun. Montreal's gonna be fun. You go to Toronto's gonna be fun. But like, you think you're going to Winnipeg, and you're like, oh, like what are we gonna do in Winnipeg? But there's like a
Yeah.
lot to do, and
There
like
is.
it was fun.
Yeah. You know, and you know, we're it's great unveiling all this stuff because this is the kind of thing that you were saying, like, you know, you were thinking back to all these different times and it was kind of, you know, putting a smile on your face and you're really kind of, you know, re-energizing yourself thinking about these old stories. So you had mentioned that you had a couple of good training camp stories for us that you were kind of saving up for this because
Okay.
again, we're leading up to the 2024 season. You know, for people who don't really, you know, have a chance to experience what a training camp's like, you know, tee something up for us. You know, what's
So
something that sticks out for you?
Okay. So this was a fun one too, actually. Like I said, like training camp's rough. So you got to find ways to keep yourself like sane off the field. You're hanging out with the guys, you're seeing the same faces every day, you're going to the same room every day and all that stuff. So we had two rookies one year, and we decided that we were gonna play a little bit of a prank on these guys. And so all the veteran offensive linemen, we went down to the dollar store not too far from where we were practicing, and we got like I want to say 8 of those like just alarm clocks, these little plastic alarm clocks, and we set them like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., like all the way through the night. Got our coach to call the two rookies down to his office and like give him shit and be like, you guys need to pick it up. Like you guys are kind of slacking here, like kind of tear a strip out of their ass. And at this time, we had gotten the key to their room, and because we're staying in a hotel, so we got the key to their room, and we go into their room quickly to realize that we had gotten the wrong key and we were in like some random people's room. We just had to turn around and run out of there. It wasn't their room. It was like next door. So got to go back down, get the right key, go in the room, and we're hiding these clocks like everywhere. Like I had taped one, opened the drawer, taped it underneath, like closed the drawer, put one under the basket, like the garbage bag in the basket, put them like all over the room, and then get back out. We all go down to the hot tubs because they got to run back. They got to go by the hot tub when they're coming to the coach's office. So when we see the two guys going by, we're like, hey, like come on down, whatever. They don't come over. So then the next morning we're at breakfast, and the one guy just comes in just hot, like comes into the into the cafeteria, and we're like, hey man, like what's going on? And he's a French guy from Laval. He's like, what the fuck? Like everything. He's like, you guys put these clocks in my room. We're like, what are you talking about? Like, what happened? And he goes off about this for like 5 minutes, and the other guy comes out and he's like, what happened? Like, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, we don't know who did this. Like, no idea. Like, until I don't even know to this day that I haven't admitted to either of them that we did this. But then later on in the day, and they just like, it was funny. Like, I think we might have told them later on, but later on the day, I was in training and he was in the room telling like everybody. And I got my phone out and I actually was like videoing him telling this story. So I have this on and I can every once in a while go back and like just watch him tell this story. And it's really funny. Like him talking to me, but it's like, what the fuck? Like just losing his mind. That was one of the more fun kind of pranks that we had in training camp. And then like I'm sure you remember the Phantom. That's the if you
Yeah.
sometimes if you get it a line, the Phantom will come and get you, and the
Yeah.
Phantom will he sometimes you'll end up in an ice tub, sometimes you'll
Yep.
end up at the goalpost. Like it just depends on what you've done and who you've pissed off.
The Phantom is an all-encompassing being who
Yeah.
yes, he will get you if you step out of line. Even if you don't step out of line, sometimes he'll
Oh,
get you.
it was guys that wouldn't sing. I think it was in Toronto. If you didn't sing at like, because you gotta like, as a rookie, like the vets will kind of start to like pound the table a little bit, and you got to get up and either sing or tell a joke,
Do
or
an impression or a skit
yeah,
or something.
something. And if you refused, then the Phantom might get your stuff out of your locker, and it might end up in the ice tub, or you might end up in the ice tub, like I was saying. So that was kind of one of the fun things too.
So speaking of songs in training camp, I actually have a bone to pick with you because for years I've kind of kept this, but now that we're talking
Now that we're
about
at
it,
episode 17.
now that we're at
Now that we're
episode
here.
17, um, do you remember the song you sang in 2007?
I'm pretty sure I sang My Girl.
You absolutely did. Do you know why you got the inspiration for singing that song?
Did I steal that from you?
You stole it from me because I was gonna
No.
go the next day, and I told you, yeah, I'm gonna sing this one. It's gonna be good. You know, everyone's gonna like jump along, and you ran up there because I was about to go, and I see you scurry up to the front, and all of a sudden you look at me dead in the eyes, and it's kind of like I know what you're about to do. And you start singing, and then everyone stands up, they're clapping along with you, and you get a standing ovation, and all of a sudden it's like, Andrew, such a good, oh, that was fantastic. Like me, what are you
That
talking
doesn't sound like
about?
something I would do.
Well, I
Oh
will say,
no.
you went to so many training camps. I only went through the one, so it sticks out in my mind. But I will say,
Shit.
first of all, you did a great job. You have a beautiful
Thanks.
singing voice. But I did want to bring that up because that it was something I would do to somebody, and I kind of got the Uno reverse card pulled on me there. So golf clap for you for stealing
I
my.
you know, I
But
don't
you know
know
what? If
why.
you're gonna do it, you got to kill it, and you did
Yeah.
it. You did a great job.
That's funny. Well, I apologize for stealing your song. I'm sure you would have sang it much better than I did.
No, I wouldn't have. That's the thing. You actually did a much better rendition than I would have, but again, it was all good.
Man, that's too good.
There was one of them though that forget who it was. I think it was a DB from Kentucky, and he could do this weird
That
like
girl, Bo. His name was Bo.
Yes, Bo Smith. And for anybody who watches the show Hard Knocks, which was an HBO special on inside NFL training camp, you actually see that happen. He does the same thing he did at BC rookie camp at the New York Jets rookie camp
Oh, really?
when it was the New York Jets season.
Yeah.
And he got booed off the stage in 2007 when he did it with us, and he got booed off the stage in 2010 when he did it with the Jets.
As he should have been. It sounded like he was saying, and we started calling him Girl because it sounded like he was saying Girl when he was saying that, doing this stupid freaking like sound.
Everybody, yeah, like all the DBs were hyping up. It's like, oh, Bo can do this really cool sound with it. So everyone's like, okay, we got to listen to this. And it literally just sounded like a wind-up toy.
It was so bad. It was terrible.
But clearly didn't learn his lesson from the first attempt. I thought, you know what? This is too
wasn't
good.
the right crowd.
Wrong
this
audience.
Wasn't the right crowd.
I mean, a different room here. Yeah, this is cool.
All these Canadians up here don't appreciate the wonder of special vocal effects.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I've seen some pretty good ones. I've seen some pretty bad ones, but like as long as guys go up there and like give it their best, you know what I mean? That's all anybody wants. You don't got to be a great singer or anything like that. It's just like you're being part of the team. You're like, you're not too cool. Like you're part of, like, you know what I mean? It's just like a camaraderie thing. It's just like I think it's I think it's a nice little initiation type of thing.
Yeah. In case you're wondering, Kyle, you're probably going to ask me, what did I settle for my backup? It was Dust in the Wind by Kansas.
There you go. I can see you belting that out there. I was kind of hoping secretly that you panicked and did like Baby Got Back or something. And just...
So I'm not even joking. Like when I was a rookie at University of Ottawa, we had to do the same thing. I did panic and I did try to sing Baby Got Back, and I messed up all the words and I got booed off the stage. Like, did you read my diary before that?
How did he pull that one out?
We've been
That's
doing too
funny.
many episodes together here. Apparently, I've just got the
Yeah.
same wavelength. But and you know, I don't know if you guys have maybe seen the web gem that the Kelsey brothers kind of pulled from Eagles training camp when Jason Kelsey was talking about the rookie who made the joke about Doug Peterson and
Oh
his
yeah.
smaller member, but it actually absolutely killed in
Yeah.
the actual talent show portion. Was there ever a joke at a coach's expense that really went over well? Because we could probably pick some that didn't go over so well, but the ones that do land are fewer and far between.
I remember my when we had to do like it was the skits because we had like the singing at dinner or whatever, but then like we had like a team like a night out, we went bowling or whatever, and like the rookies had to do skits. And I remember in BC, like I decided to make fun of the starting left guard at the time. Like we're not saying names, right? But and he was a bigger guy, obviously, as offensive lineman. So I put some pillows under my t-shirt, and then I got like coat hangers and like taped the because he didn't have very big arms to kind of. So I taped like the gloves to the end of the coat arm, and it came like barging into the bowling alley, and everyone knew who it was right away. I don't think he liked that very much, but he was a good sport about it. But I think that landed pretty well. Wasn't a
Yeah.
coach, but he thought he
Yeah.
was a coach sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, those and the, who was it in Ravens camp there that impersonated Shannon Sharp there with, I want my
Oh.
restitution. Yeah, those are the
Oh,
ones that stick out when they do the documentaries and kind of the viral video cutouts and whatnot
we
afterwards.
had a guy in Toronto too that could do a very good Jim Barker, and it
Okay.
killed.
So, and you know, the funny part is, I'm sure a lot of people have tried because it's a very fun impression to do. But Pinball Clemens, there had to be a few of them that came in doing the pinball, like, ah,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
But again, like pinball is more of a
he's
sacred
so
figure in
electric,
Toronto.
man. He's
Yeah.
so man. Like he comes in and starts talking, you're immediately like you're locked in right away. He's so good,
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the smallest person that's probably instilled fear in me when I met him, because again,
Yeah.
he just irradiates electricity.
Yeah.
And the inside of his left hand must be so sore and he's done talking, because
Yo,
he's
he,
doing this the
yeah.
entire time that he's talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah, but you get
Um
locked in though. He gave us a pretty good one before Grey Cup, and everyone was just like fired up. You're like ready to
yeah.
go right away.
um so kind of seeing where the CFL is now, and obviously the draft's happening, training camp's right around the corner, the next season's going to come up. When you evaluate where the CFL is, and I mean, I don't know how much you're still following it, how much you're still involved. I know you do some things with the Edmonton alumni and whatnot. Where do you see this league kind of going over the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see it, the 10th team eventually getting there? Do you see anything else happening where it's new partnerships that are coming in? Like, where do you see kind of things going from when the time you retired to where it's going to be in the next 5, 10 years?
I think like it's still, I mean, there's so much room to grow. I mean, like it's just the like the I want to say like it's there's I'm hopeful for the CFL. I think that like finding like the kind of connecting with like the younger fans with like the apps and like the like that's become so much more important in football. Like and it's always and the product on the field has always been good. There's always been
Yeah.
good guys. There's always been good players. There's good coaching. Like I think it's like finding ways to connect guys into the community. And I always thought that like when I played that it was part of your job to like help create fans. So like all this stuff that I would do in the community, like part of that was just like, like kids want, I remember when I was a kid, like a player coming and talking, like you remember like coming and talking to you at school, like you're just like anything that they say, you're like, okay, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna do that. So I feel like having that was the older way of doing it. But now like you've got like this, like even like with the sports betting and the fantasy football and all that kind of stuff, I think that like that will help out too. I just think that like we have to keep the Canadian football game is like it's still like a very like the CFL is a very Canadian. We need it to be that. You know what I mean? You can't try to go and make it to like all the other leagues that are coming up, like the XFL, and you know what I mean? Like it's not that. It's like this is something that's like Canada. We feel strongly about it. We love the CFL, and like we just still got to tap into that where we can like have like you're embracing that history of the CFL, but also still moving forward and like kind of doing some of these new things that's going to bring new fans and bring new people around that want to be interested and want to watch the game. So I feel like it's going to go far. Like I feel like there's a lot of young, really good athletes that are coming up into the CFL now, and like I think that's always going to help. The better the field, the better the product in the field is, like the better the league is going to be.
Yeah, that's good answer, because I mean that's exactly what needs to happen. You know, you need to move the game ahead forward, and Kyle and I talk about all the time. The worst thing that you ever hear from people is, well, that's not the way that we've always done it.
Right.
Well, the way that
Yeah.
you've always done it has gotten you into some pretty hairy situations. So again, evolving the game, evolving, the the things that are surrounding the game, like you were mentioning with apps and whatnot, kind of leading into the new age is essential. But you mentioned obviously you do things for the fans, trying to get them engaged. On that topic, what's the most random thing that you ever signed?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I like. It was always weird when kids like when you go like the kids always ask you to like sign body parts. You know what I mean? It's like or sign my arm. I'm like I don't want to. I didn't like signing people's like bodies. I'm like and then even like their clothes. I'm like your mom's gonna be pissed at you if she comes home and she's got this signature on your sweater. But like I would sign that. But like most of the time, kids just like sign my forehead or sign my. I never really signed anything too crazy that I can remember. I think it was always mostly just like either like the kind of clothes or body parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
What
you
about
know,
you? I feel like you have a pretty crazy one.
I don't. And that's the thing. It's because it was mostly just like, here's a piece of paper that I ripped out of my loose
Yeah.
leaf,
Yeah.
binder, and then sign off on that. One, I will say the weirdest thing I've seen somebody sign though, I forget who it was, but they signed a sock. Someone took their sock off and said,
Yeah.
"Sign my sock," and then proceeded to put their sock back on. Like I don't know about you, I wouldn't have touched it,
It's
but
weird. It's weird. Shoes, socks, like all that
yeah.
stuff, man. But like with kids, it's fun. Like when you go to schools, man, they just they anything, like anything
Oh
they can
yeah.
find that they have, they just want you to sign it. Sign my water bottle. Like they're just like their disposable water bottle. Like, can you sign this? Like you're gonna throw that away in 5 minutes. Like, but sure.
yeah, no, and it's great points too, right? Because I think everyone that's on this call right now is optimistic about the future because, as you say, right, like the product on the field is tremendous. It's just some of the extracurriculars as far as promoting said product, which
Yeah.
kind of get called into question. I mean, tonight's the perfect example, right? Like Detroit just had what 700,000. They just set the
Dude.
record for the
Yeah.
NFL draft there, and tonight the CFL is announcing it from inside TSN's studio.
Right.
So it's like little opportunities like that they're kind of missing out on, right? Like you think of the great history of tailgating that goes along with CFL. Could you not have done a little event, even if it only got 50 or 70,000 people out? Like that's a win as far as growing fans. So as you're looking at the game, expansion and on-field product aside, what's maybe something off the field that you think the CFL could do that could help usher in maybe sort of that new era of fans?
I think like kind of showcasing the players more. I think
Mhm.
getting guys like, which is, like because you want to connect the guys to the community. You want to like that's what brings people to the games. Like they're gonna like form these like whatever. If it's a guy in a school and then the kids see him and they're like, oh man, I want to go see this guy play. And then you gotta get your parents to bring you down to the game. Like I think it's like having guys out there and like showing a little bit more of the other side of like that's off season, like whether it's like I don't know documentaries or whatever. I know these things all cost money, and that's not like something that the CFL always has a ton of things to do. But I think that I mean sometimes a lot of times it takes you got to spend money to make money, right? Like so you got
Mhm.
to do some things that are going to help you grow and like help show these people what they're doing in the off season and what they're going through and guys do that themselves now too. Like guys are kind of posting
Yeah.
things on social media all the time and guys are like helping, but you got to like now, okay, like it was kind of funny when the last owner came or when Victor Cui came in here in Edmonton and he said he was like I was chatting with him, he was saying he was going through the social media and like all the guys on the roster and he's like none of them had like Edmonton Esk or Edmonton Elk, sorry, like in their logo. None of them had like they weren't, you know what I mean? He's just like we got to get these guys doing and like it was a good point. It's like you got to like kind of have them like you can't force guys to wear things or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's just like if you give them like there's cool things for them to wear, and there's, you know what I mean, like make it fun and make it good. Like they're going to want to show that off. And I think that's started coming around too. I feel like that, I mean, I remember some of the stuff that we would get from like the team when we first came in, like it was like, it wasn't very nice, and you don't want to wear it out on the time. But now you see like now you see some of the stuff on like the guys are wearing on the sideline and something. I'm like, yeah, that's good stuff. So like all that kind of stuff will make it better, make it cool, like make it more fun. I think those are the things that the leagues has been starting to do, and will continue on to do.
Yeah, Kyle's heard me mention expanding the brand, I think several million times over the last few years, and that's ultimately exactly what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're so tightly gripped on the CFL brand and each individual team branding that they're not allowing, again, the players to go out and highlight their personalities while wearing,
Yeah.
the branded material, or making sure that they're out promoting whatever
Mm-hmm.
team or league they're playing with, right? So yeah, it's such a welcome point because I basically beat my head against the wall over and over again every time I see an opportunity for the league to do something like that, and it just gets missed because it's, well, we don't want to take the chance of something happening and us being embarrassed by it. You mentioned spend money to make money. You gotta, an old Bruce Arians analogy, you gotta risk it to get the biscuit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to put the brand out there in
Yeah.
order to actually, have something come back and promote it. So yeah, 100%. And I think that you being involved, in the community as an ex-player, as an alumni, that part's so essential because there's not enough people who are retired from the league who are willing to come back and kind of put themselves out there to promote whatever team that they played for as well. So it's getting a mix of current, former, players together to really highlight, hey, this is a great sport. This is such a great atmosphere. I spent 10 years playing in this league. I love it. And here's exactly why you should start to bring out your kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I've worked, for one of the teams in the CFL. I've kind of been immersed on the other side of it, seeing
Mm-hmm.
kind of how things tick behind the scenes. And you're 100% right. I every chance I got to bring a player into the community,
Mm-hmm.
they're chomping at the bit to do it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned spending money. It doesn't cost that much, and it's built into the budget. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are ways to organically get around that whole thing where you're basically just getting all publicity and
Yeah.
all revenue back without having to actually go out and put thousands of dollars into these types of things.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. Like there's and teams like I worked for the team as well. Like when I was after I retired from the CFL, and like doing that in the community and like seeing like how they are, especially like being in all the different markets. Like I've been in Toronto, BC, I've been in Edmonton, I've been in Saskatchewan, and like you see how the players, like the reception of the players, and like how much people care about it, no matter where you are. Like there's always like, I mean, obviously like when you're in Saskatchewan, a place like Saskatchewan, like everybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
Everybody like you come into the restaurant and they're like, "Oh, Andrew Jones, like I'm an offensive lineman." I'm like, "How do you know who I am?" And they're like, "What happened on this play?" Like they're like so smart down there, but then they give you like 50% off of your bill. You know what I mean? Like they care about the team, and like it's
Yeah.
so having markets like that, and then like being able to kind of do those things, and like even Edmonton, like we were lucky out here too. Like we have a lot of great fans, and like they all obviously had like the whole thing with like the name change and all that, you know what I mean? They've been going through it with like the product on the field, like they haven't been winning games, and like that's where it all starts for any franchise. If you're not winning games, like it's gonna be tough sledding. But like even still, like fans stay behind, like stick behind you, and like you start winning again, they're gonna come back around more, and they're just, you have to like, you got to capitalize on those things when you have the opportunity. But no matter what, you got to have the players out in the community. Like no matter what, like if you when you had to pull that back, like you'll see that happening. Like after COVID, like then players weren't allowed to go to the schools. Like I'm sure that affects like how many fans are coming out to games now, because there's just like a huge disconnect there. So you
Yeah.
got to get those guys out as much as possible, and like have them repping the brand, and like have them like creating these new fans that want to come and enjoy, like, because the CFL's, it's so fun. Like it's fun to watch it live. It's fun to watch it on TV. Like you get a good experience when you go down to the stadium, like, and people want to come back. Like, and you just got to keep pushing that. And like it's gonna go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, last thing that I want to kind of ask you, because I think it's a fun question, but past, present, who's one CFL player that you would have absolutely loved to have played with but didn't get a chance to?
Good question. Um, for a lot of, I mean, man, he having a guy like, because I'm in Edmonton too, so like having a guy like Gizmo Williams, man, like that guy was a beast. Like just like the electricity that he brought with his returns, like, and plus I've spoken with him and talked to him. Like he's a pretty like interesting cat too, so I feel like he'd be a cool guy to kind of play with.
Yeah,
There's other ones too, but like he'd be one of them that would stick out quickly. And then
yeah.
obviously, like I mean, a guy like Doug Flutie, you know what I mean? Like there's so many, like, but
Yeah,
yeah, but
I was just gonna say, like, I remember growing up, and Rocket Ishmael was always the guy that stuck out in my mind because he was really the marquee name of the league when I started
yeah,
watching. So, right,
yeah,
so I remember always saying, like, man, he played in that same league, and like when I got to that level, I'm like, man, Rocket Ishmael played in
yeah,
this league. Like, this is amazing. So, yeah, you're 100% right. There's so many good players, great players that have come through the CFL, and I think people, again, going back to understanding the roots of the game and knowing where it's going to go. That's a big part of it. Is
yeah.
knowing. Look at how many marquee names have come through this league, have either succeeded or they've struggled because of how good the actual product is on the field, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fun question because, like I said, I've talked with a few guys, and they've all kind of cycled back to like, oh, I wish I could have played with Joe Theismann, or I wish I could
Right.
have played with like Mark Gastineau or whoever it was, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of going up, and you see those guys in the '90s. I think that was a really fun time for the CFL because you had the expansion to the states. More players are coming in the league, so you got like the
Yeah.
Mike Pringles and whatnot. You're seeing the kind of uprising of the Ricky Rays, the Anthony Calvillos, the Henry Burrises, and yeah, you've got just a litany of names that you can rattle off to say, you know what, I either have the pleasure of getting to meet these people, play
Yeah.
against these people, play with these people, and then now being a part of the alumni community, you get to associate with them at all these different events too, which is really cool.
It is cool. Like it's really, I mean, it's like someone I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, it sounds kind of like you're in a fraternity, and it's like you kind of like you form these like relationships, and like you form like you go through so many things together, and even if it was like a player that you didn't like or someone that you played against or whatever, but like you later connect down the line, and you're like, or you sometimes there's a guy that you don't like, and then you're not on the same team as him, but then like he's on the same team, you're like, okay, you're not a bad guy, you're just not a good person to be a teammate or to be going against. Like, there's guys that you meet like that all the time. But I mean, like you and everyone's like, there's so many like that's the cool thing about like a CFL locker room is, man, like these guys are from all walks of life, like kind of going through so many different things and like coming together, like all these people, and like you form like teams and relationships and friendships that like last forever. And like it's just like it was like we're both pretty lucky that we got to experience it to whatever level we were at. And like it was just like anyone who's been kind of going has been in that, like it's just like, man, I know that you've gone through a lot, and I know that you like pushed yourself and gone through some things, and like so I respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, last question here on my end is because I've seen a full range of responses to this, as far as, prominently displayed in a special place in the house versus I don't even know where they are right now. Like, where are your 3 Grey Cup rings currently
This
residing in your
sounds like a
household?
trap. Are you gonna send something? No, it's okay.
And
Well, I
please
don't keep them
let
in
us know the alarm code as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't keep them in a sock, but so I've got a box that I have them in. I had them in a safety deposit box for a really long time, but now I have them in like a box that I usually like kind of, but yeah, so I have them in just a nice, like the box that I think the Toronto one came in was like the nicest box. So I have them, all 3 of them in that one, but it's hidden somewhere in
An
the
elaborate
house. Yeah.
labyrinth of booby traps there.
Buried it in the backyard.
Yeah. And Andrew's got the get smart type of scenario with all the different codes and doors. But yeah, last thing before we let you go is, obviously you've got the 2 little ones that are probably going to wake you up sometime during the night there. But
Probably.
obviously season's right around the corner. Who's your pick to win the Grey Cup this year?
It's hard to say. Who's
Just
gonna
give
win the
us an
Grey Cup
answer.
this year? You know what? Like, I gotta say, I mean, Winnipeg lost too many guys. I'd say, the BC Lions. I think they've got a good team. They've got some great coaches. They've got a lot of like young guys. They've got a good mix of vets in there. I would say that I would be very confident to put money on the BC Lions winning the Grey Cup.
100%. I think that with Vernon Adams Jr., anytime, as we've seen in the past, you have a good quarterback steering the ship, you always give yourself a chance to win the cup. So,
Yeah.
100%, a very solid pick to go on. And obviously, you've got your jersey in the back. I've got my gear on. It's very fitting to end the show like that. But Jonesy, honestly, man, it's been such a great time catching up with you, kind of reminiscing about the old days and obviously your fantastic career. And obviously, you've got a standing invitation to come back whenever you want to break down some CFL stuff throughout the season. And
Appreciate
all
that.
the best
That'd
to
be
you
fun.
going forward. And yeah, we look forward to doing it with you again.
Thanks, man. This was awesome. I appreciate you guys. Kyle, thanks a lot, guys.